Welcome back, everybody. It's the Fantasy Pros Dynasty Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Bogman. Follow me on the Twitter at Bogman Sports. I'm joined, as always, by my friendo, Pat Fitzmaurice at Fitz_FF on the Twitter machine. Fitzy, we got camp movers and who has moved the most on our Dynasty list because, you know, Dynasty lists shouldn't move too much from when you initially make them. But there is a lot of news in camp, a lot of injuries, a lot of moving pieces, a lot of guys in the doghouse, a lot of guys surprising. So I feel like it's easier to move some players up than it is to move some players down, but some players have to move down as well. So do you kind of find that to be the way you do things on your Dynasty list, or are you like moving pieces a little bit here and there like every single day?
Boggs, I think dynasty rankings change more during training camp than redraft rankings because a lot of times it's the guys in sort of the bottom reaches of the rankings that we're moving around. And those guys are important in dynasty because we've got, 28-man, 30-man, 32-man rosters. And, some of these guys, like it's becoming apparent they're just not going to have significant roles this year, maybe like are fighting for their NFL lives, and other guys climbing and guys and hopefully we can squeeze in some talk about these guys. Like there are a bunch of guys who totally were falling through the cracks of rookie drafts a couple of months ago now, who look like all of a sudden really interesting pieces,
Well, let's start there. Let's start there, Fitzy, and let's start with some of the guys that are moving up just overall. And, mainly it's rookies, right? Sometimes it's veterans or, usually it's young veterans that didn't make an impact last year and now are making impact this year. There's a couple on my list. I know there's a couple on your list as well, Fitzy. But let's just start with some of these guys that are moving up that are rookies that kind of fell through on those first-year player rookie drafts, however you guys do it. Who are some names that stick out to you? You want to start at running back here?
Sure. Deuce Vaughn is a big one for me. And I just thought he was too small. I mean, he's like the only guy to have ever measured in at the combine at 5'5". So right. I'm not too much of a sizist when it comes to my running backs. As you know, I've been touting Devon A-Chain throughout the process. And I guess I shouldn't be biased against Deuce. Would it be inconceivable that he would be the handcuff behind Tony Pollard?
It's not inconceivable, but I tell you what made me give up on guys Deuce Vaughn size is Donnell Pumphrey, right? Donnell Pumphrey was a little guy from San Diego State. I think he was an inch taller than Deuce, by the way. 5'6", great player. And I kind of pushed my chips in here. Just didn't work out. Also, it was Philly when Philly was playing musical chairs with running backs and stuff. But he couldn't even make it as a special teamer, and he got hurt immediately. It was just a size thing. And when you watch Deuce Vaughn play, especially at Kansas State, he's unbelievable. Like, we should probably never have that thought. And this is why I particularly don't care for thresholds. A lot of teams will take a guy off their draft list because he's not X amount of weight or X amount of height, or his hands aren't big enough, or he doesn't run a certain speed, or whatever it is. But I think film should probably be number one, and it should be like 85% of your evaluation. Maybe knock a guy if he comes in underweight, overweight, shorter than you expected, whatever it is, maybe push them down a little bit, but don't ruin what they've done, what they've shown you on the film. And Deuce Vaughn is one of those guys. You're exactly right, where, we overlooked him because of his size, and everything he's done has been impressive. Even blitz pickup, which is surprising he just knows how to use that size and leverage, and he knows how to use his size to his advantage, in traffic to kind of duck below the defenders. They can't see him behind the offensive lineman. So he's so much fun to watch. He's definitely a guy that I overlooked as well. So who else, as far as running backs, is there any other ones that are standing out to you here?
I think that's really it. I mean, maybe Chris Rodriguez, Keaton Mitchell could possibly be factors, but really it was only Deuce. I think they're more at wide receiver, Boggs.
There's a lot of wide receivers. That's why I didn't want to start with wide receiver. There's a ton of them. I'll throw out, so Keaton Mitchell's a good one. I feel like that whole running backs depth chart behind Dobbins might get mixed up here because, Melvin Gordon could get cut. They don't owe him a lot of money. So he's not having a good camp. Keaton Mitchell has been good. Justice Hill has been pretty solid. Sean Tucker had a pretty decent preseason game the last time out for the Bucks. So there are some other running backs that we'll talk about too when we get into our big movers here. But let's go to wide receivers here, Fitzy. And I mean, obviously, and I didn't put him on this list because I've been beating the drum too loud, but Jalen Hyatt has impressed everybody. So you start there and kind of work down, but there are so many guys on this list. If you had to pick, we'll go over them all, but if you had to pick one that you're taking a dart throw at the end of a rookie draft, end of a, full draft, whatever it is, who is that guy that's impressed you the most that you want to get some investment in here?
Well, Cedric Tillman, but I mean, he was going in most drafts. Like, of the guys who I don't think were commonly going, or at least not until the 5th round of rookie drafts, I would say maybe Puka Nacua. And all credit to Derek Brown. He was on this guy. And I think with Puka and another guy who would be right on his heels, Michael Wilson of the Cardinals, who it looks like is going to start as their X receiver. Both of those guys, hard to get a read on them in college based on how often they were hurt. And maybe that's going to be a concern for them in the NFL too, because these guys were not giving us full seasons at the college level. But, Puka, they sat him out in preseason week 2. I don't know if that was because his job was secure and they're actually doing the veteran deference thing with this day 3 rookie. But I think he's going to be really good. Wilson is really intriguing. Demario Douglas, should we mention him too?
Pop Douglas, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I thought Kayshon Boutte, based on his sophomore year, was really interesting. But it seems like Douglas is ahead of Boutte in the race for a roster spot. He
definitely is. I mean, Boutte has done some good things. I think he scored a big touchdown in last week's preseason game, so he has been very, very solid. But Douglas, it's every day in camp. Like, you go and you look at, and we're getting a lot of this from beat writers, but also you hear it from the coaches as well, of these guys having great stuff in camp, and everybody is raving about Demario Douglas, who apparently, I didn't know he went by Pop. I think we need to call him Pop Douglas because that's what he goes by. But Douglas has been great. And Boutte has been good. They really are pushing Tyquan Thornton off of the roster, who is kind of he's a little bit of a one-trick pony, just a speed guy, but also like that is exactly what they needed in New England, and he is just not providing big plays at all. So, great one for him. Any other wideouts that you're looking at that have been moving up your board here?
I think that's about it, Boggs. At least among, when we're talking about the guys from the reaches of the draft where some guys who weren't even taken in some drafts or whatever. Like there are other guys. I mean, like,
how about Tank? Yeah, Tank Dell, because he was going in most drafts, but it was late. Oh,
sure.
The
4th round typically.
If I ask you Tank Dell versus Josh Downs today, are you still going Josh Downs?
I am, but it has gotten a lot closer. Whereas Downs was a guy like I was even considering maybe like late in the 2nd round.
Right.
Now that seems like maybe it was too early, and Tank, yes. I mean, I'm still inherently skeptical of wide receivers that small, especially when they don't have just blazing speed. And Tank is fast. Maybe it's more like quickness. I guess it's just for stopwatch speed. I wasn't that impressed by what Tank Dell ran at the combine. Like a guy that small, you're hoping he's sub 4.4. Which Tank was not, but
I think that is one of the guys. Like the Tank Dell is one of those guys that I always make fun of the 3-cone drill, because everyone's like, "Oh, DK Metcalf, he's so stiff, terrible 3." It was like a historically bad 3-cone drill. I'm like, why are you asking Tank Dell to, or why Tank Dell? You should ask to cut. Why are you asking DK Metcalf to do these hard cuts? Yes, everybody has to do them, but he's an oak tree. He gets in front of a DB and they're not getting around him. So that he's using his size. You know what I mean? So I don't know.
His separation is like manhandling a cornerback and throwing him off
knocking them
at the line
over.
of scrimmage. Exactly.
Yeah. It's a big stiff arm to the ground. That's what DK needs. But the little guys like that, we probably need to pay more attention to the 3-cone drill for them, because he just snaps off a route incredibly, and the defender is just like, well, where'd he go? I mean, it's amazing to watch him. A couple of these Cincinnati guys too, like they don't need them. But Andre Josevich, Charlie Jones have been making some great plays. Trenton Irwin gotten a lot of buzz in camp. So the Bengals depth chart has been really, really good. I think you mentioned Cedric Tillman, who is buried, but would it be that surprising? And maybe it would be, because DPJ has played so well, but we know that Elijah Moore is the 2, Amari Cooper's the 1, and Joku's the 3rd option in the pass game, and everyone is 2 steps behind Nick Chubb for touches. But that 4th wide receiver, Tillman versus DPJ, I mean, for me, I think Tillman pushes DPJ back to the bench most downs. So
maybe, I mean, like, even if that doesn't happen this year, though, Boggs, like
Tillman
is 1 injury away from any of 3 guys to be a part of 3 receiver sets.
Yeah.
And I like how he looks on the field. He just looks like a big bully. He is a physically like he's going to be a problem for cornerbacks, Boggs. And by the way, anyone who's joining this late wondering, we're talking about the lesser rookies, the guy who gave 3 picks.
Throws.
Yeah, I mean, we're not mentioning Zay Flowers, who looks like an absolute gem. We're not mentioning Bijan, who of course is going to be awesome.
They didn't move up that much. They were already very high.
Right. We're not even mentioning your guy Luke Musgrave, Boggs, who apparently has been so impressive in Packers camp. They're running jet sweeps with him.
I know, man. So I'm so excited about Luke Musgrave and my take on Luke Musgrave before the draft and everything. I think the main concern with Luke Musgrave is not about skill. He always had it. It's about injury and staying on the field, because he didn't do a lot of that at Oregon State, which is a little bit scary. So, but before we get to our big names, I got to tell you guys to get ready for the ultimate fantasy football showdown with the 4th annual FantasyPros Fantasy Fest. Join us live on our YouTube channel Wednesday, August 30th, starting at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 Pacific, for a fantasy football extravaganza like no other. We've got a star-studded lineup of familiar faces and the best fantasy experts from all around the industry coming together to bring you the latest and greatest insights to help you dominate your draft. We're taking player rankings, mock drafts, and a treasure trove of exclusive topics that you won't find anywhere else. But here's the best part. You can be a part of the action. Just join the live conversation, ask your burning questions, and help us make the big calls. Can't make it live? No worries. You can catch all the excitement later on your own time. But trust us, you won't want to miss the live show. So mark your calendars and set those reminders, because the Fantasy Pros Fantasy Fest is happening exclusively on our YouTube channel on Wednesday, August 30th. So check that out. Going to be a lot of great info there. With that being said, Fitzy, let's dive into our biggest movers from camp. We talked about some of the guys at the bottom. Maybe you want to make a dart throw on and pressing in camp and all that stuff. But who physically moved on your list the most? Let's start at quarterback. And let's put our best foot forward here, Fitzy. Let's go with the positive. Who is moving up your list to start?
Jordan Love. Gotta say it's Jordan Love. Like I'm I'm sort of a Jordan Love skeptic, Boggs, as a Packer fan.
It's a great band name, by the way. That should be a Milwaukee band name for sure. Jordan Love skeptic. Yes.
Yeah, as someone who just hated the Jordan Love draft pick in 2020, I've been not like biased, but I've definitely wanted some hard evidence of competence from Jordan Love, and hadn't really gotten too much of it to date. But camp reports have been pretty good. He's looked good in the preseason games. I'm cautiously enthusiastic. And then we just talked about Musgrave. Reports have been glowing about Jayden Reed as well. I think Watson and Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, are looking like, they're going to be solid NFL wide receiver. Well, Doubs will be a solid NFL wide receiver, and Watson could be a star. So even though this is one of the youngest pass catching groups in NFL history, it's actually looking like it could be an average or above average group, which I didn't think we were going to get. And, Jordan Love's going to get a better offensive line this year than Aaron Rodgers is going to have with the Jets. So,
provided
the
everyone stays
ecosystem
healthy.
is pretty good, and I think I'm starting to feel pretty good that he is not going to fall on his face. And that is very faint praise indeed, Boggs. But maybe I'm holding out hope that he could be, an average to above average starter this year. Like, I think there's a chance.
I think the biggest credence towards that is the fact that they got to let him just do everything he possibly can. And because this is his year, right? Like, you get one shot, and it's not fair that you sat for 3 years, you get one season as a shot, and that's your audition, and that's it. But if the Packers fall on their face, as you said, and are terrible, they're going to be picking high in a QB-heavy draft from what we see from the outside. As of now, it looks like a QB-heavy draft. So they will absolutely draft your replacement if you are not good this year, which makes me excited about drafting Jordan Love on a redraft as well as a dynasty league, because he's got a real shot here to make it. And I think, like, he was underutilized as a runner in college. I think you might get a little more of that with him because he can move. It's not something he typically does, but he can move. So hoping to see a little bit of that as well. My first QB, I only have one QB. I didn't have any really moving down. I obviously moved guys down a little bit, but I think the guy that moved the highest to me in camp and preseason and all that is Malik Willis, moving back up the list. And this is a guy going into the draft that we thought, all right, Tannehill is the one, Malik's the two, and then the Titans go out and draft Will Levis. And you couple that with the fact that they weren't willing to give Malik Willis the reins when they were down and out. They went and got a street free agent, Josh Dobbs, to do it. So that's how far down he was in the mind of the Titans. And now it looks like he has won this number 2 job, and a number 2 job behind a guy that is on shaky ground in Ryan Tannehill. So I had him in the high 40s. I moved him to the high 30s. Currently, his dynasty ECR, and for Love, it's 24. So it's like in a 12-man, that's like your last QB2. Malik Willis's ECR is 40 right now among QBs. I moved him to 30. So, before, ahead of some of those starters below him, because he does have the crazy rushing upside, and maybe he is still going out there a little bit and doing backyard stuff, but it's more controlled and less chaotic and panicky now. And that is his game. When you drafted him, you knew that was his game, and that's why you like him. So I'm kind of pushing my chips back in on Malik Willis. Are you moving him up, or are you still, well, they drafted Will Levis, that's the guy they want, I'm not doing it?
All right, so I think if something were to happen to Tannehill, if Tannehill were to get hurt in week 2, yes, Willis is coming into the game. Let me ask you this, Boggs. Let's say the Titans are 3-9, and they decide to run up the white flag on the rest of the season and sit Tannehill. Who do you think they're putting in, Levis or Willis?
I think you put in Willis because you probably want to trade him, and you let him go out there and audition for some teams that could potentially want him. And if he sucks, then you put in Levis and say, hey, it's your turn to turn around, show us something. Because if you're that bad and you keep losing games, once again, just like the Packers, if the Titans are up in that spot to take Caleb Williams or somebody high, they're definitely going to do it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm not sure what they would do, but obviously, yes, this does reinvigorate the Willis dynasty value. And, we had seen it kind of bottom out for a while, and we talked about how illogical that was when we knew that Willis was a project coming into the league based on his, coming from a smaller program and being somewhat raw and undeveloped, at least as far as the passing skills. So, yeah, I mean, it's nice to see him sort of reinvigorate his dynasty value and just his NFL value in general, because everyone was crapping on him after the Josh Dobbs thing last year, which was sort of sad to see. Bugs, let's talk about Trey Lance, because we never talk about Trey Lance on this show. So he's obviously like at the top of my down list.
You stole him from me too. Like I definitely was going to have Trey Lance on the down list here, but you got him first.
And it's the weirdest thing in the world, Boggs, because and I was talking about this with Chris Harris on his show yesterday. We were talking a little dynasty and just how with most quarterbacks who fail to launch, Zach Wilson for instance. Like, all of a sudden, like, his value is there one moment and then it's gone. And it looks like the stock chart from, the Dow Jones and the great crash. But like with Trey Lance, it's just been this slow, steady devaluation. And, the comparison I used was the stock chart for Radio Shack, where it's just been this slow descent into irrelevance, basically.
If you had to pick a date that it fell more, is it the date that he got hurt, or like maybe that third game of Brock Purdy where you just knew maybe they got something here with Purdy? Which one hurt him more, his own injury or Purdy being good?
The injury, because I'm still not buying into Purdy entirely.
Yeah.
I mean, he picked on a string of bad defenses. We'll see about Purdy. I mean, maybe I have to come with an apology about like totally misjudging Purdy when he's an MVP candidate through week 8 or something. But I'm still
the whole NFL would have to. You get in line on those letters. This is he still was Mr. Irrelevant. So you're not first or last on the people that overlooked Brock Purdy.
I do want to give Kyle Shanahan a shot of sodium pentothal and get an honest answer to what he thinks about Trey Lance, because it's just so strange that they would do what they did, move heaven and earth to move up to the number 3 pick to get him, and then just like not really give him his chance. Like he's had chances and then he got hurt, but you would think they would want to keep seeing more until they knew one way or the other. And maybe he is just terrible in practice, although I don't, get the impression from camp reports that he's just like a train wreck. But I don't know, man. It's just, we'll see. I still think there's a good chance he is starting for someone in 2024.
Is this the worst trade of all time?
Oh, the 49ers trade to move up to number 3. It has to be when you don't even give the guy a chance. I mean, like, you could say it's the Bears moving up one spot to draft Mitch Trubisky ahead of Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson. That was pretty bad too, but the Lance deal is definitely up there.
Yeah, it's bad, especially with some of those guys that went immediately after him, and some of the guys, the picks that were used where they could have taken the guys they could have Micah Parsons, and they took Trey Lance. You know what I mean? Like, there's so much of that going around. It's tough. I mean, look, the Niners haven't not had success because of Trey Lance, so you at least have that. But overall in a vacuum, might have been one of the worst deals of all time. Let's get into some running backs that are moving up the list here, Fitzy, and I think we both have 2 moving up. So let's start with the positives and give me your 2 first.
Dameon Pierce and James Cook. And with Pierce,
great names.
Yeah, with Pierce, it's not only did the Texans not spend any significant draft capital on a running back, they signed Devin Singletary, and people thought, oh, this is the guy Dameon Pierce is going to split work with. Singletary looks like just a pure handcuff now based on the way the Texans have been handling those two. So apparently they do see Dameon Pierce as like a featured guy, and Singletary is more just the change of pace, straight backup guy. So that's really encouraging. I think we've agreed that we liked what we saw from Pierce in year 1. Maybe he hit the wall a little bit after, Dan Mullen kind of used him in that weird platoon role at Florida. And really he hadn't gotten the sort of work he was getting with the Texans. Not surprised he ran out of gas at the end of the season, but still thumbs up for him. Clear runway for a year 2 liftoff, I think. And James Cook, it's just, I think we knew he was going to be the primary third down back for Buffalo, but we didn't know what sort of percentage of early down work he was going to get. And now it looks like he's going to be the primary early down guy too. And not the sole early down guy. I think we know that we're going to see a good bit of either Damian Harris or Latavius Murray or both on early downs. But it just seems like James Cook is going to be on the field quite a bit for Buffalo this year. And, like in redraft, he's going in RB2 range now, like low-end RB2 range. And I think, like, for dynasty startups, he should probably be, around RB 2021 or something like that. So, good trajectory for him, I believe.
James Cook moved up more than anybody else on my list. So once again, you sniped me by getting your list up first. You got two players I wanted to put Trey Lance on there and James Cook on my list, because for me, coming into this season and, you know, them adding Dameon Harris, it looked like, okay, well, Dameon Harris is just the replacement for Singletary, who was a 200-touch guy last year, right? And Dameon Harris had that big game in Buffalo and the weather and all that stuff, so it's like the Bills were watching that and saw, all right, this could be our guy in the future when he comes up. So I like that. But the thing that really started turning me on to James Cook was like his first interview in minicamp or training camp. I can't remember which one it was, but he said, obviously I'm the number one. I didn't really feel like it came from arrogance. I felt like that's a guy that's been made some promises, and it's pretty clear that he was, right? And he is going to be the, you know, 3 down back, I feel like, to start. And Harris or Murray, they're kind of closer than either one of them are to Cook in terms of workload, it seems like, from Buffalo. I'm not Dameon Pierce. Look, I love Dameon Pierce. I have him as an RB2. I'm a little bit lower than his ECR. I believe right now it's 17, so I'm a little bit lower than that, still in the RB2 area though. I still hold out, like, let me see him get through a season healthy, because he came out with 374 touches in college, somewhere in that neighborhood, and then he had like 250 touches last year and broke down. You know what I mean? So I want to see him do it first before I really, really buy into Pierce. But in terms of skill, he's way ahead of Singletary. It's not close. So I do like Dameon Pierce as well. The two guys that moved up my list the most, then we'll get into some droppers at the running back position here. Isiah Pacheco and Tank Bigsby were my big movers here. Now, Pacheco, you know, look, I know he's been hurt, and I know that he has not been seen in any preseason games, and he hasn't even been practicing, you know, in pads yet at all. And he had off-season surgery. So that should probably lower him in a lot of people's eyes. But what I saw was, look, you re-sign McKinnon, you don't go out of your way to get someone else, a veteran, that can come in and do something. So either the Chiefs really, really trust Clyde Edwards-Helaire or Deneric Prince, which I don't think you can trust an undrafted free agent rookie, or a guy that has been a bust so far. So I think they're babying Pacheco. I think they have been the whole offseason. They waited probably too long for him to have these surgeries, but he's good to go. He might play in the preseason game this week. I think he's going to be a huge part of that offense, and he only caught 13 balls last year, and everything you hear in practice is he's catching everything. He's running all these different routes. He looks fast, and he's giving 100% on every snap. I think the Chiefs still love him. I think he's going to be a primary focus of that team, even though he's been banged up and we haven't seen a lot of him. The reports have still all been positive. So I'm still in on Pacheco. Your thoughts on Pacheco? Should I move him up, or are you kind of like in the, I'm going to leave him where I have him because he's been banged up?
Is this the part of the show we edit out, Boggs, after the Chiefs trade for Jonathan Taylor in a few hours?
Oh, no, my God, that would be amazing. Well, Pacheco would go to the Colts in that deal. So I think he would probably have to.
Well, the Chiefs could right the wrong that they committed a couple of years ago, drafting Clyde Edwards-Helaire over Jonathan Taylor, which
I want JT in Miami pretty bad. That's the one I want. So we'll see.
So, I mean, I agree with you that the Chiefs did not go out and look at all the ample opportunity teams have had to sign. My God, these guys have been out on as free agents forever. Like not Hunt, but Zeke finally came off the market. Dalvin Cook finally came off the market. But Fournette and Hunt are still out there. I mean, These guys were out there forever, and the Chiefs just turned up their noses at these guys. So, yes, I agree that it's encouraging.
Yeah, I mean, I'm big on Pacheco. Maybe it'll come back to bite me, but that's my guy right there. I'm very, very excited about him. Before we move on to my next, and I have 2 more running backs. I don't know why I thought I only had 2. I have 3 running backs total here. But before we move on, by now most of you probably heard of Reality Sports Online, the powerful fantasy sports platform where owners get to build and manage their fantasy team like an NFL general manager. But the question is, have you tried it? It's time to go see what all the buzz in the dynasty community is about. Free agency, multi-year contracts, a rookie draft, multi-team trades, franchise tags, contract extensions, first-round rookie options, automated contract and salary cap functionality, and much, much more. Think it sounds complicated? It is not. The best thing about Reality Sports Online Fantasy Front Office is that it doesn't take any more time than a standard league. It just requires more strategy. Think you're among the fantasy elite? Well, this is the platform to test your mettle. Still not sure? You can test out your general manager skills for FREE free in a mock. If you like what you see, use the promo code FantasyPros to receive a 10% discount on your team or league today. Fantasy just got real at realitysportsonline.com. My second and third running backs that I am moving up here, Fitzy. I mean, Tank Bigsby is one, and I moved him up, but I'm still right around ECR, and Roschon, who I love, I moved up, and I'm still below ECR on him. Their ECR is right here, 36 and 49. I'm just slightly ahead, 39 and 36. I'm just slightly ahead on Bigsby and slightly below on Roschon. But both these guys are, Tank went into a situation where there was no way he had a shot to win the number one job. And if ETN wasn't there and we knew what he had and he was already good, Tank would have run away with this job, I feel like, if they were both drafted in the same class or something, because everything I read, from coach interviews to position coaches to beat writers to fans, everybody loves Tank Bigsby. And I like him, but to me, he is a 1-2 first, second down thumper, change of pace guy, and Travis Etienne is unbelievably skilled. So I think I probably wasn't high enough on Tank coming in, and he has kind of cleared the pathway here. And if anything happens to Etienne, this would be a 3-down back for this team. So I think he definitely had to move up into that RB3 territory for me. Where are you at on Tank, Fitzy?
That's about it. Similar to what you, similar to the way you see him, Boggs, in that I didn't really think all that much of him and thought, maybe he can force himself into some sort of role. Now it's clear he's going to force himself into some sort of role and could be a really valuable handcuff if anything happened to ETN. And it's possible. I mean, this is more of a, I won't say more of a 50-50 because we're going to see some Jermichael Hasty too on passing downs, but Bigsby has made me reevaluate the way I see Travis Etienne. My view of Etienne has definitely declined just because of Bigsby's presence. And I have heard Mike Dempsey, the Sirius XM Fantasy Channel mainstay, who also does Jaguars preseason games, and he had told me that he was backing off on ETN because of how Bigsby has been playing in Jaguars camp. So and talk to me about Roschon.
Well, Roschon for me, I didn't feel like I was low on him. I felt like I was higher on him. Obviously, I watched him more than most people do because I saw every single one of his college football games. I'm a Texas fan. So, but for me, it was, okay, you come into this situation where, and I still think, Khalil Herbert is the number one guy there, and it's not really a question. But Deontay Foreman, I love Deontay Foreman. I also watched every single one of his games at Texas, right? I saw his 55 carries against Kansas in a loss in the first game Texas lost to Kansas 80 years. He was a thumper, but he tore his Achilles, and it took him really 2 years to return from that and become a good player again. And he kind of re-solidified himself with Carolina last year and had a great season. He goes over to Chicago where there's a chance, and then they draft Roschon, and Roschon can be seen as maybe a special teamer because he gives 150% every single snap. You were getting all of Roschon every single play, which is why the Bears drafted him, but it's also made him move past Foreman. And I don't know that Foreman has looked bad, but Roschon has looked awesome. He's looked ahead of his years in pass protection, and he is definitely a closer. So I think you have your role set in Chicago, and Roschon is definitely the 2 behind Herbert, and I think it might be a 1A and 1B by the end of the season because Herbert's great, and he is definitely a thumper, but he is not good in pass protection, and I think Roschon could take a lot of those third down snaps just because he's better in protection and he can catch the ball. He wasn't asked to do a lot of that in Texas. That was more Bijan's role. But Roschon is the guy here, and he could easily, after this season, be the number one back for Chicago. So I do think you need to be invested. I think other people are still way more high or way higher on Roschon, so my opinion has moved higher, but I can't even get him up to ECR here, which surprised me a little bit. So what's your take on Roschon here, Fitzy?
I mean, I guess I'm not viewing him too differently than I was a few months ago, Boggs. I like him. I'm pro Roschon, but I thought it was going to be a messy three-way committee, and now maybe things are more clearly defined than I thought they were going to be with Herbert at the top. But yes, kind of unexpected that Roschon does seem to have pushed his way past Foreman on the depth chart. At least it seems that way. So, yeah, I guess I just didn't expect it to be so clear who was 1, who was 2, who was 3. And, but he's still 2. So I don't know how valuable he's going to be this year. But, I do like him for the future. I think he was a worthy, we were seeing Roschon go 3rd round typically in Superflex Dynasty rookie drafts, and I think he was worth that price.
So your running backs that are moving down are way more interesting than mine, so I'll just burn through mine pretty quick here. My losers this offseason are Dalvin Cook and Joe Mixon, and I don't think that's a shock to anybody. I'm a 3-year window guy, and so until Cook got cut, because it seemed like he was going to get cut way earlier than he actually did. It seemed like maybe they had worked through some stuff and he was going to stay. He was still a 300 touch guy with Minnesota, and there was no reason to expect him not to do that. Should he have stayed, he obviously didn't. He went to New York where they have Breece Hall and good depth at that position. So he was the farthest mover, I think, of anybody on my list after getting cut by the Vikings. Joe Mixon at the opposite end seemed like he would get cut and then didn't, had his off-field stuff, so maybe there was still a chance for him to get cut. And then they said, well, we're not going to cut him, but he has to restructure, and he did. So he jumped through more hoops to stay on a good team in Cincinnati, but I think the writing is kind of on the wall. This is it for Joe Mixon in Cincy, so you're getting what you can from him and then watching him right off into the sunset to be the backup somewhere next year. So, I thought maybe Cincy would restructure and extend. They didn't do any of that. He's obviously not in their plans beyond this season. And I think we'll see a decent amount of Chris Evans and Chase Brown as well. Because Mixon is, he's aging. I feel like you can see it more with him than other guys. But boring ones, Fitz. I mean, are you thinking the same with those guys?
Nothing to add about Dalvin Cook, yes. Yeah. And it's funny, Joe Mixon, Boggs, I think Joe Mixon should probably end up being one of the most frequently traded players in Dynasty leagues over the next month and a half, because he is clearly a win-now guy. And if anyone who's in rebuild mode has Joe Mixon, get rid of him for a second-round pick next year, which I think is probably fair value. You're not going to get a first for him, but you should be able to get a second in next year's very strong rookie draft. And Mixon does have 1 year where the outlook is really good. He's going to be the primary ball carrier for the Bengals. Should be, 1,200 plus yards from scrimmage. But then next year, he is going to be in the same situation Dalvin Cook and Ezekiel Elliott and some of these other guys were this year. He's going to be looking for a job where he is going to be a committee guy somewhere. Yeah,
and, the running back market is dried up. Teams aren't going out and signing even decent names. They'd rather go with the cheaper option. So, it's just tough out there for an old man like Joe Mixon. Now, Mixon could end up in Philly. Maybe Swift doesn't work out and Gainwell gets hurt again and Rashad Penny's always hurt. And they go, screw it. Let's just give someone a contract. And they go with Mixon. That would be a good spot for him, but it's more likely he ends up, with Vegas behind Josh Jacobs or something. You know what I mean? Just a weird spot somewhere. Cook is behind Breece Hall. So who are your running backs that are moving down are way more interesting than mine. So why don't you go through them here?
Well, I mean, they're big names, but Rhamondre Stevenson, it's just simply the fact that I think there was some optimism that maybe he was just the one other Patriots running back besides Corey Dillon, who they might view as an actual bell cow lead guy. And no, it turns out not with Ezekiel Elliott. So that's it with Stevenson. Just the fact, still a really good player. I'm always a big fan of those big, sturdy guys with nimble feet, Boggs. And it's not like he has lost all dynasty value, but he's just not going to be a bell cow. We can live with that.
And that's kind of where I was with Rhamondre going into the season, so I didn't move him too much. But you just knew. You look at Pierre Strong is not going in as the number 2. They're going to bring in somebody, and they interviewed everyone. They tried James Robinson and ended up cutting him. Like, the writing was on the wall. So yeah, Stevenson didn't move for me, but it's the same outlook that I had for him, and it ended up happening. Who's number 2?
And then J.K. Dobbins, Boggs, just like a weird, I wanted to be optimistic. I don't know if I wanted to be, because I actually wasn't as far as my rankings. But, after he had the cleanup surgery last year, he came back and he was good at the end of the regular season. He was good. But then he's back on PUP early in camp. Like, what's going on with that? Then he's also doing this weird, quasi holdout thing. Like, when he hasn't actually, held up over a full season and done anything for the Ravens. Like, what are you doing, dude? You have no leverage whatsoever. Like, if
He's
Jonathan
got a bad
Taylor,
attitude, man.
Right,
He had some smack talking about the team after the playoff loss too. Like, I don't know, man. He may have a little bit of an attitude issue.
Yeah, if guys like Josh Jacobs and Jonathan Taylor and Austin Eckler don't have any leverage, what makes you think you have any leverage? A guy who actually, has achieved a fraction of what those dudes have. So, and then just, I don't know. It just does not seem, I don't know how he's going to fit in the Todd Monken offense. It's just he's not really a guy I want on any of my rosters.
Yeah, I mean, that could be a team definitely looking for a guy, or a guy like Keaton Mitchell could make an impact because they put together a track team and he's super, super fast. He's speedy little running back, a lot like Devin Achane. So I would like to see that if that would work out there. All right, let's move over to the wideouts here. They're moving up and down Fitzy. I only have one. I'll just go ahead and knock mine out here because you have a couple, and then we both have, I have 3 guys that I am actually moving down. I found it hard to move guys lower on my wide receiver list or higher. I mean, because there's so much skill at this position. I find it to be deep. There's a lot of guys that are very low that I think could end up being very high at the end of the season. Obviously, a guy that we talked about in Jalen Hyatt, if he takes over a number 1 job, could definitely do that. But the guy that I think moved up the most on my list from putting this together was Jayden Reed, who you mentioned with the Packers. And, from the outside looking in, it's like, okay, well, the number 1 job is up for grabs here in Green Bay. And I thought that's definitely going to Christian Watson. As you mentioned, potential superstar here for this kid. I mean, he has a couple issues with drops, but he is wide open. If he cleans that up, I mean, he is going to be a burner. I love watching Christian Watson. Dobbs is a downfield threat. I think that is most of his game. I wouldn't call him a one-trick pony, but I would say he does that one trick better than any of his other tricks. So I think he's a deep shot guy. He's going to have boom and bust games that are going to be annoying. So you're looking for a possession guy. Well, it's going to be between Luke Musgrave, a guy that I love, and Jayden Reed, a guy that I liked coming out, but Reed has been so impressive. He's going to be on the field so much. You also have Tucker Kraft. I think that there is a decent chance that Jayden Reed becomes maybe not the number 1 target, but the guy who gets the most targets because he's working over the middle. He can kind of be a safety blanket to a young QB, a first-year starter in Jordan Love. So I think there's a lot of potential for Jayden Reed, and some of these other rookies have not been impressing. I'll mention one when we get there, and he's moved past a bunch of guys on my list. So even when I found it hard to move guys up or down on my list, I kind of found it easier to move them down. But Jayden Reed is one of those big movers for me. So obviously I'm pushing my chips in for him and trying to get him at the end of, even redrafts, I'm trying to get him at the end of there. He's going to come way higher in a rookie draft or a dynasty draft, but I'm more in on Jayden Reed now than I was 2 months ago. So your thoughts on Reed?
Day 2 draft capital. He has been everything they hoped he would be. He is unquestionably their starting slot receiver. And while maybe he comes off the field in 2 receiver sets, at least early on, it's still going to be 70% 3 wide receiver sets at least, I would think, for the Packers. So he's going to be on the field a lot. I do think he has a chance to make a pretty significant impact now. And yeah, he looks like a really good asset to have on your dynasty team going forward.
Begrudgingly, you have one of my favorite guys on here. Again, getting to the list first gets you access. But who are your 2 wide receivers that have moved up the most for you?
Do I have 2? Oh yeah, I do have 2. Zay Flowers and Skyy Moore, Boggs. And Zay Flowers, we also talked about him. I mean, I think he has a chance to be the Ravens' best receiver from the jump. He is generating incredible buzz in training camp. Lamar Jackson has nicknamed him Joystick. We saw him have a touchdown on a sweet little catch and run.
Oh my God.
Monday night,
carved up that defense.
Oh my God,
too.
he's so good after the catch, Boggs, and he's like he's just really quick and hard to cover, and he's like Jahan Dotson in that he punches well above his weight on contested catches. This guy's going to be a lot of fun. Like, I'm excited about him. And now, like, there's no question if I were redoing, and some people are doing their rookie drafts now this time of year, there is no question I'd take him ahead of Quentin Johnston. And I think I'd take him ahead of Addison, too. Because Addison, the thing that scared me about Addison were his testing numbers kind of sucked. But the production was there, and at Pittsburgh he was an absolute monster. But now,
when we talk about film, 85% film, Biletnikoff Award winner for Addison. Come on.
Yeah, but it wasn't like the film on Zay was bad either.
No, it was amazing, but it was size. It was size questions. Yeah,
but I had decided on the way I wound up ordering it was I had Addison ahead of Johnston and Flowers, and I was kind of splitting the difference on Flowers, and I think I took Quentin over Flowers in one draft, Flowers over Quentin in one rookie draft. Now I would order it Flowers, Addison, Quentin.
Well, I have 3 guys moving down, and Quentin is one of those guys. So I'll just go ahead and get him out of the way here because we're talking about him here. And look, the guy keeps dropping the ball. Keenan Allen and Mike Williams are healthy. Eckler's still possible to lead that team in targets. Everett didn't get cut, who we all thought he would. Josh Palmer also looks really good in camp. So, Quentin Johnston is definitely, I have 3 wideouts that are moving down my list. He is definitely one of them. And Zay Flowers, so you would take Zay Flowers over Rashad Bateman, then you would say, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In Dynasty for sure. I think
anything ever.
Even in redraft right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So that was I know I got a lot of flack on my Bateman hate here, which I don't even hate Bateman. I just don't like the situation for him.
Sure.
Get him out of Baltimore. I think I like him way more. But Skyy Moore also, Zay Flowers was my guy. Obviously I liked him coming out of Boston College. Just one of those guys. I love it when a guy, A.J. Dillon did this at the same college too. I love it when everyone on the defense knows where the ball is going. It still goes to that guy, and he still has a great game. That was a lot of what my love for Kenneth Walker as well is, everybody in the stadium knows Kenneth Walker's getting the ball, and they still can't stop him. And that was Zay Flowers for Boston College. But your second wide receiver, who I, not begrudgingly, because I do like this guy, but I've had so many bets with Debro against him that I have to admit this guy moved up my board as well.
Yeah, and Skyy Moore's been running with the Chiefs' first team throughout training camp, and it seems like he is, even though Rashee Rice and Justin Ross have generated a lot of positive buzz, Skyy is the one who is clearly going to be on the field in 2 receiver sets. There's no question about that. And,
for sure.
Something Matt Harmon of Yahoo said the other day made a lot of sense. He noted that while we have kind of thought of Skyy as being a slot receiver, last year he actually lined up outside about half the time, and in the slot about 42% of the time, and then in the backfield 8% of the time. So he was really playing multiple wide receiver positions for the Chiefs.
They were trying to find something for him last year. Yeah.
Or they just wanted him to learn and be versatile, Boggs. And I can imagine for a guy coming out of the MAC conference, his head was probably swimming with all of that.
Sure.
But maybe while it prevented him from grasping everything and firing as a rookie, maybe that's going to help him in the long run, because now he's got versatility. He knows how to play these different positions if he has to. He can line up outside, in the slot, wherever.
Makes him more trustable for sure.
Yeah. So do buy, even though in this era we've gotten used to seeing rookie wide receivers pop in year one, it didn't happen for Skyy. So, we're wondering like, oh, did we just misread this guy? Maybe not. There's a plausible reason why he didn't pop last year and why he might pop in year two.
Post-hype sleeper.
Yes,
that is
sir.
Right. That's what we love to see. Skyy Moore is fantastic. I think he's good. He's the slot role. And look, you have his counterpart as part of your wide receivers that are moving down the list. So talk a little bit about Kadarius Toney moving down.
Oh, yeah. He's the only receiver on my down list, Boggs. And how can you not put him there, man? And I was even ready, as you know, to buy back into this guy. And just like that, I keep bringing up the stat about how he's been targeted on 17.3% of all his snaps in the NFL so far, and Justin Jefferson was only targeted on 17.1 last year and led the NFL in targets. But then Kadarius Toney, who was already injured every body part possible in the first 2 years, on the very first day of training camp goes and hurts his knee and has to get like this meniscus trim. And it's like, dude, and that was part of the thing, Boggs. We wanted to see him get a full training camp in with the mad scientist Andy Reid cooking up ways to use him and get him on the same, get him in sync with Patrick Mahomes, and he loses all of training camp.
Yeah.
So now, like, I'm out, man. I can't do this with. I've still got him on enough dynasty teams. Like, I've been collecting shares, so it's gonna
you're still invested. Yeah. But you're selling those shares.
It's gonna take me like 4 years to divest myself, Boggs. But so I'm still gonna have shares, but like I'm not acquiring any more at this point.
Well, you won't have him for 4 years on any of those teams, or you'll have him on all those teams. Like it's it's going to be one or the other for him for sure. My guys that are moving down are guys that I was extremely high on coming into the NFL, and I still like these guys. I feel like more than most people do. Maybe not the second guy. Well, let's just start with him because it's kind of the same deal as Kadarius Toney. For me, it's Treylon Burks, who I still really like the skill set, but we know the offense is all Derrick Henry first, and that's probably, I would assume, under Vrabel, as long as he's in Tennessee, you're probably going to see a run first offense. He's a defensive guy. He played under Belichick forever, who they are always a run first team. So I think he's going to stick to that. So Burks, also being pushed to the number 2 spot behind Hopkins, and now getting hurt again. I mean, he was hurt. He came into camp out of shape last year. Then he was hurt the entire season pretty much, or playing gimpy or questionable or whatever. And now you get him in camp. He starts to look good. You hear some positive vibe about him. And now he's hurt again. Is this just a dude that is going to be constantly kind of injured? Like Mike Williams, you know what I mean? Like Corey Davis was before he unexpectedly retired at 28 or whatever, like, is he going to be one of those guys that's just constantly banged up and you see flashes, but you never see him do it? So that's a guy that has moved down my list. And the other guy I know you'll be really surprised maybe to hear, everyone should be surprised, is Jameson Williams, who, now look, it's not surprised that I moved him down because I was higher than anyone else in the world, I feel like, on Jameson Williams coming in. And the suspension doesn't bother me at all. I do not care about the suspension. Like, I think that's a young man making a dumb mistake, and we've all been there. So I'm not going to knock him for that. It sucks it's 6 games, but hurt coming into the NFL, didn't look quite 100% last year. Maybe they, moved him up a little bit too fast, and now he's hurt again and going to miss the rest of the preseason. The old scouting trope, availability is the best ability, and Jameson just doesn't have it. So your thoughts on Jameson Williams here, Fitzy?
I am a little worried that he is maybe going to be a chronically injured guy, Boggs. That's starting to maybe feel like that. Plus, like, I do worry a little bit about the gambling thing. He might be kind of a knucklehead, and he's not the like, we've seen him in interviews. He's not exactly like the warmest, fuzziest dude either. Like, he's a little edgy. He's got an edge to him, and like, edgy and injury prone is not a good combination. I don't know.
Yeah.
So and just quick reactions on the other two. Quentin, like we talked about it with Matt Waldman last year, how Waldman was like really worried about Quentin's catching technique, and maybe we're seeing why now. So yes,
the drops generally don't bother me. I'll say that because Deontay drops the ball a million times, and there's wide receivers that drop the ball more than Deontay too. It's just like every time he drops it, it's in a critical situation on a nationally televised game. Like that is when Deontay loves to drop the ball the most. But in this scenario, it does, because it is affecting where he is on the depth chart. If a great wide receiver drops the ball, nobody cares. He's going to be back on the field the next play. If you drop the ball in your third and there's Josh Palmer sitting right behind you and you have 4 other options that catch the ball better than you, QB's not going to go back to you. You better catch that ball. So that is what is bothering me about him for sure.
And Treylon Burks, like the injuries are, the accumulating injuries are a concern for sure, but I'm not. Otherwise, I'm not
being in shape, and a hard ass coach like Vrabel is just not going to give you. You don't get any leeway with him.
I'm more concerned about the injuries than what Hopkins is going to do to him, because I was worried, and Thor Nystrom and I have talked about this, how we worried that maybe Burks would have been miscast as like this alpha receiver, this go-to guy. Like that's not really what he's about. It's like. Kind of use him the way he was used at Arkansas. Scheme touches to him close to the line of scrimmage and let him like
Debo
wreak frigging havoc with the ball in his hands. Yeah, he is Debo like.
Yeah, he could be that, but you have to be on the field to be Debo like. So we have one more dropper here. It's the only tight end that we have, and this is your guy. So tell me about him.
Yeah, Greg Dulcich. And this one kind of, it's weird, Bugs, because like last year after he was hurt and basically missed all of training camp or most of training camp, nearly all of training camp. And, but then he comes in a few weeks into the season and was like good right away and like a factor. And that spoke really well of a guy who as a rookie basically missed his entire training camp and still came in and made an impact right away. So everyone thought it was going to be a positive trajectory year 2. And then Sean Payton brings in Adam Troutman, and Adam Troutman is now playing ahead of Greg Dulcich. So it looks like Dulcich is going to be like a part-time tight end, which is not what we want to see.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And I was always a little worried, like when Peyton brought in Adam Troutman, it's like, maybe we should be worried about some wide receivers, because he brought in Marquez Callaway too. It's like this hard-headed, these are my guys and they will have a role. So yeah, I mean, I worry about him as well. So that is it for us on this week's show. Next week, you just mentioned Thor. We're going to have Thor on the show to take a look at the upcoming draft. This is the last show of the season for us, because we go on hiatus during the regular season. So one more show to go, Fitzy. So it's a little sad, but it's going to be a really fun one to go out on for sure.
Oh, definitely. People are going to want to listen to that one, because next year's class, it is looking like a bumper crop, and Thor is going to have some thoughts. So I can't wait.
It's going to be a lot of fun. So look forward to that. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter at Bogman Sports for myself, at Fitz_FF for Fitzy, and we will see you guys next week. Take it easy, everybody.